Our top story takes us to Indian-occupied Kashmir, where Indian troops have martyred 3 more civilians in Pulwama district. The civilians were targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Tral area of the district. 26 unarmed Kashmiri civilians have been martyred by Indian troops over the past 2 months. Meanwhile, scheduled local panchayat elections in the occupied valley have been cancelled after overwhelming rejection by Kashmiris. Elections were set to be held on over 11,000 seats in the valley on March the 5th. All major Indian political parties, including the Congress, National Conference, and People's Democratic Party, have already boycotted the polls. The party said there is no point of contesting the polls when all top Kashmiri leadership is under arrest by the BJP government. Well, Indian authorities have registered a case against countless internet users employing proxy servers to avoid a social media ban in occupied Kashmir. Police said they have misused social media to propagate a secessionist ideology. They add that the internet users could be charged under a law which allows the government to designate them as terrorists. The valley has been under a communications blackout since August 2019, I should say, when India stripped the region of its autonomy. The tight internet restrictions in occupied Kashmir have been slammed by rights activists worldwide. In a related development, the jailed ex-chief minister of occupied Kashmir, Mehbooba Muftis' daughter, Iltija Mufti, says Indian brutalities are pushing Kashmiris towards Pakistan. Mufti has become one of the loudest voices for the 8 million Kashmiris imprisoned in a curfew by New Delhi since August 5th. In an interview, she said there is a lot of anger among Kashmiris at Indian atrocities, which have increased after the illegal annexation. Slamming the lockdown by the BJP government, Mufti said the clampdown has led to an economic, psychological, and emotional crisis. She said Indian forces are monitoring the internet usage of Kashmiri youths and imposing controversial laws. New Delhi has imposed a total curfew and communications blackout in the valley for the last 199 days. Well, Pakistan has once again asked India to hold accountable the perpetrators of the 2007 train bombing in Haryana. In a statement, the Foreign Office said India's delay tactics show its unwillingness to serve justice to the bombing's victims. It said the acquittal of the attack's mastermind, Swami Asimanand, last year proves terrorists enjoy impunity under the BJP-led government. The Foreign Office said that the Indian government should take serious steps to bring the perpetrators of the Samjhauta Express blasts to justice. 68 passengers, including 40 Pakistanis, were killed in the terrorist attack on the 18th of February 2007. Back in India, the Anti-Citizenship Act protesters have refused to quit until the withdrawal of the law. The Indian government has been facing countrywide demonstrations, rallies, and sit-ins for the last 3 months. Carrying on the sit-in, Shaheen Bagh protesters in New Delhi have started a makeshift school to continue education unhindered. The organizers of the school said they are doing this for protesting mothers so their children can learn as the sit-in continues. Meanwhile, a massive rally against the law has been held in Chennai, in the southern state of Tamil Nadu. Over 15,000 people took part in that rally, demanding the withdrawal of the act immediately. UN Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez, for his part, has expressed deep concern over the discrimination against Muslims in India. In an interview, the UN chief conveyed apprehensions over the Modi government's controversial Citizenship Act. The UN Secretary General said he is concerned there is a risk of statelessness for 2 million Muslims excluded by the divisive act. Gutierrez said it is pertinent whenever nationality laws are changed, efforts are taken to avoid statelessness. Discussing reports of human rights violations in occupied Kashmir, he said these must be taken seriously. The UN chief said these reports have clarified exactly what is happening in Kashmir under the Indian-imposed clampdown. Let's move on now to some other news. The death toll from the new coronavirus in China has now passed the 2,000 mark, with 136 more people dying over the past 24 hours. Over 1,700 have been infected overnight, bringing the total number of people affected by the disease to 75,000. China's National Health Commission says for the first time, the number of recovered patients was greater than the number of new cases reported. Meanwhile, Hong Kong has reported its second death from the new coronavirus. Elsewhere, the first passengers have begun disembarking from the virus-hit cruise ship moored off Yokohama, Japan, 14 days after quarantine. More than 540 people on board have been infected with the coronavirus, the most outside of China. Afghanistan's Independent Election Commission has declared Ashraf Ghani the winner of last year's presidential election, but all political parties have rejected the results, with some declaring victory. This report has the details.
The results of Afghan presidential election brought more confusion than stability to the already uncertain situation in the war-torn country. President Ashraf Ghani has been declared winner for the second time, with main rival Abdullah contesting the final results. According to the commission, Ghani got 50.6% of the vote while Abdullah got 39.52%.
I'm dedicating this victory of the people to the people. And as the first servants with our united team, we will always safeguard the rights of the Afghan people.
Calling the results an act of treason, Afghanistan's former chief executive announced he will form his own government.
Based on transparent and biometric votes, stability and convergence have won this election, and we announce our victory.
Other main rival and militant-turned-politician Gulbuddin Hikmatyar has not issued any statement yet on the results. Held on September 28, the polls were marred by low turnout, allegations of rigging, widespread voter fraud and violence.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Gutierrez has called for an immediate ceasefire in northwest Syria. In a statement, he expressed alarm at the rapid deterioration of the humanitarian situation in Idlib. The UN Secretary-General said the only path to stability is a credible and inclusive UN-enabled political solution. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow will ensure terrorist positions in Idlib are completely eradicated. U.S. President Donald Trump said his Turkish counterpart Tayyip Erdogan is trying to avert a humanitarian tragedy in Idlib.
He's fighting on Idlib. He doesn't want people to be killed by the thousands and hundreds of thousands. And he called me about that and other reasons. But we spoke about Idlib, and we're working together on seeing what can be done.
Well, a UN report says nearly 900,000 Syrians have been displaced by the recent clashes. Well, the UN envoy to Yemen, Martin Griffiths, says peace efforts are at risk of collapsing as violence is escalating in the country. In a briefing to the Security Council, Griffiths said the fighting between belligerents broke out in January after months of relative calm. The envoy said the situation in Yemen has only grown worse, with both sides announcing expansive military goals. Griffiths said Houthi rebels and government forces have each given reassurances of their interest in a peaceful political solution. But their current actions contradict their claims. Yemen has been stuck in violence and chaos since 2014, when rebelling Houthis overran much of the country, including the capital, Sana'a. The UN says tens of thousands of Yemenis have been killed since then, while another 14 million are at risk of starvation. Libya's internationally recognized government has suspended its involvement in ceasefire negotiations hosted by the UN at Geneva. The announcement followed an attack by forces loyal to Khalifa Haftar on the port of Tripoli, which killed 3 people and injured 5 others. The port authority said the massive material losses from the attack paralyzed maritime traffic. In a statement, the Presidential Council of the Government of National Accord said it will firmly respond to the attack. The UN envoy to Libya, Ghassan Salameh, called the seaport attack a big breach of the ceasefire. The attack happened as 5 military representatives each from the GNA and Haftar's forces gathered in Geneva for negotiations. The United Nations says no single country is adequately protecting children's health, their environment, or their futures. A landmark report by a commission of over 40 health experts finds every child and adolescent is under immediate threat.
The report, published in The Lancet, ranks the performance of 180 countries on child survival, education, and nutrition rates. Under this criteria, less developed states such as the Central African Republic and Chad perform poorly compared to rich countries. But the rankings are largely reversed when the impact of air pollution from carbon emissions is assessed. Excessive emissions by wealthier nations burden children with additional dangers, from deadly heat waves to the increased spread of tropical disease. The report also highlights the threat children face from harmful marketing of fat and sugar-laden foods, alcohol, and tobacco.
I'll be back after this break with further news. Stay tuned for that. Let's begin this segment of the Bulletin in the U.S., where a small museum in Pennsylvania has found that a painting in its collection is actually the work of 17th century Dutch master Rembrandt. The painting, called Portrait of a Young Woman, was thought to be an original when the museum acquired it in 1961, but the Rembrandt Research Project disputed its authenticity in the 1970s. The oil painting was instead attributed to an unnamed artist in Rembrandt's studio. When it was sent to New York University for conservation, experts who removed layers of varnish suspected the brushwork belonged to Rembrandt himself. Outside experts were brought in, and the consensus is now that the portrait was always an authentic Rembrandt. Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula is riddled with caves, underwater rivers, and sinkholes known as cenotes. Now a project has been launched to preserve and investigate the sites and its historic treasures. More on that now in this report.
Not as solid as it looks, the Yucatan Peninsula in the far south of Mexico is crisscrossed with an underground network of rivers, caves, and sinkholes, or cenotes. The more archaeologists explore the peninsula, the more water-filled caves they find, and the more Mayan-era artifacts turn up in the waters. Archaeologists have called the area the Great Mayan Aquifer.
Esto nos permite seguir.
This allows us to continue studying. It allows us to keep investigating, preserving, and scientifically revealing the enormous richness that the Great Mayan Aquifer has, which is this enormous body of fresh water that lies underground in the Yucatan Peninsula.
Extensión de agua dulce.
Now, Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, Switzerland's Ministry of Culture, and the National Geographic Society have joined hands to preserve the area. Digital scans will be made of each artifact, so the finds can be easily shared with the general public.
Más que una fotografía.
This assures us that we can have an exact copy, more than a photo, a physical object that we can continue to analyze. That's on one hand. On the other, it's a very visual, very attractive technology which helps us create fans for our project, which we hope will be children and students.
Para nuestro proyecto, que esperamos que sean niños.
The project will focus on 6 cenotes known to contain Mayan artifacts and evidence of ancient rituals.
Well, the European Union has added Britain's Cayman Islands to its tax havens blacklist. It has joined Oman, Fiji, and Vanuatu on the list of states accused of failing to crack down on tax abuse. The EU said the Cayman Islands have no income tax, capital gains tax, or corporation tax laws in place. It said the Cayman Islands allow firms to register despite having minimal presence in the country. The EU said Georgetown was previously added to a grey list, giving time to introduce new laws to tackle lax tax rules. European Commission Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis said blacklisted territories face reputational damage and risk losing EU funds.
First, there are, of course, reputational consequences, because being blacklisted by the EU clearly is a signal about the problems in tax governance in those jurisdictions. In addition, at the EU level, the EU list is linked to the EU funding under specific provisions.
Well, the Cayman Islands is the first UK territory to be added to the EU blacklist. Now, stock markets in Asia have recovered yesterday's losses as investors continue to monitor the economic impact of the new coronavirus epidemic. Investors are reacting to the movement in the stock prices as major companies in the region lose steam. The Nikkei 225 is trading nearly 1% higher. The Hong Kong Hang Seng Index has gained a fraction. Seoul's Kospi and the Shanghai Composite are trading flat. Meanwhile, international Brent crude oil price has surged nearly 1% as fears over slowing economic activity amid coronavirus fades away. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. And there you have it. You're all caught up. Thank you for watching this bulletin here on Indus News.